So today, Jesus is talking to us about the difference between holiness and piety. Piety isn't a bad thing, it's just not enough. Piety is a commitment. It's a commitment to certain spiritual exercises and practices, the rosary, personal devotions, adoration to the Blessed Sacrament. Being here in church right now is a pious practice. Our intention, consciously or unconsciously, our intention is to grow in holiness. But sometimes our pious practices can be shallow or hollow or rote or routine. They can move the lips and the brain, but not the heart. And sometimes they can fail to achieve the goal of holiness. We all know people who are very pious, who never miss Mass, who say the Rosary, have all sorts of religious devotions, but can sometimes be very difficult individuals to live with or to work with. Holiness is different. Holiness is immersion in God's dedication to the truth. It's laying down one's life for one's friends and others. It's service to the needs of to other people. And it's a very humbly acknowledgement that I'm weak and that I need God. There's a big difference between piety and holiness. And it's that distinction that Jesus wants to clarify and speaks about in this gospel, which is unique to St. Luke. So Jesus points out the difference by presenting two completely different individuals. And really to understand this power, we have to realize that the Pharisee, who proclaimed himself better than the rest, was actually telling the truth. He says of himself, he wasn't grasping or crooked or adulterous. He was a very good man. In fact, he was seen as much better than that tax collector. Tax collectors were regarded as traitors to their own kind, collecting taxes from their own people in the name of the Roman pagan authorities. And so the people who heard this parable would have been repulsed even by the mention of the fact that the tax collector was in the temple. He doesn't belong there. So as the people listen to this unfolding story, this parable, their presumption would be that the Pharisee would be praised and that the tax collector would be condemned. Suddenly, though, the tables are reversed. Sincerity of heart and humility before God are what makes prayer acceptable, and the tax collector becomes, you might say, the hero of the parable. Yes, he was a sinful person, but he knew he was sinful, and he asked God for mercy and forgiveness, which is what we do every time we come to Mass at the beginning. The Pharisee was so busy talking about himself and his good deeds that his prayer was little more than self-congratulations. The problem with the Pharisee's attitude is that he sees God's blessings, he sees the blessings that he's received as setting him apart from others rather than creating a solidarity, a connection with others. Externally, verbally, he thanks God, but his thanks are really a way of exalting himself since he thinks that God loves and favors him better than or not others. And so that's why Luke addresses this parable right at the very beginning to quote those who believed in themselves as being righteous while holding everyone else in contempt. And so Jesus' message, by contrast, is that God's love is universal, saints and sinners. In contrast to the Pharisee, the tax collector does the one thing necessary. He faces the painful truth about himself. Be merciful to me, a sinner. And he admits truthfully that he is a sinner, that he has no claim upon God, but he looks and he prays for God's mercy. And isn't that what we do, when we come to church and during the week and in our prayer? It's this attitude that leads not to separation from others, but to a solidarity that brings us together each week in church, and a solidarity that sends us forth into the world to bring that connectivity to prayer and holiness to the world. So, what does today's gospel say to us? gathered here in prayer on this beautiful afternoon? Well, the very fact that we're here at Mass in prayer today, we admit, as we did at the beginning of the Mass, that we're sinful people, and at the same time, that we're good people. Those are the facts of life that bring us here week after week. The problem is sometimes it can be in the way that we perceive things. So, four things that I'd like to mention. Is it possible that we can acknowledge ourselves as sinners but don't really believe it in our hearts? Secondly, could our humility really be a form of pride? Our words can spill over from our lips without traveling through the heart to humble ourselves and to acknowledge who we are. Thirdly, is it possible that we may pay lip service to our need for God, yet while at the same time living as though we could achieve everything, like the Pharisee, on our own without God, even though he was right there in the temple in the presence of God? And fourthly, maybe deep down we have the wrong attitude, not because we're bad people, but because we're so caught up in our own ego and our own goodness. So perhaps the most important thing that we can pray for at this Mass is for a changed perspective. Unlike the Pharisee, we come here not boasting why God should approve us, but rather we come with a profound awareness of our need for what God has to offer us, especially at the table of Jesus.